Good interview that Rachel Nichols did with him, in which you talked at great length about the relationship that he's had with KD, the squabble they had that one time over the ball and everything else. And so I guess, Zach, before I ask you for your prediction on these finals, and we'll repeat ours for those of you who are just joining us, what do you make of that situation? There has been a lot of this chatter that the Warriors just look like they're having more fun and in some ways look like they play better in the absence of Kevin Durant. What have you made of that, and what's your perspective?
To me, the whole time, the are they better without him has been the dumb question, has been the bogus question. Mm-hmm. The interesting question to me is, do they actually need him to win the championship? That's the one that's worth discussing.
What's the answer?
I think the answer is self-evident. It's
yes.
no. I don't think they're going to. I think they can be beaten without him. But you're asking me, can they win the championship? Yeah, they can beat the Raptors 4 times in 7 games without him. They just swept Portland. They just beat Houston a couple times without him. The Raptors, to me, they're invincible. They're as close to invincible as any team has ever been when they're healthy with KD. Now they're like a normal championship contending team, a normal championship level team.
So the reality is, whether we see KD in this series or not, and there's an increased expectation in the minds of many that we will not see him at all. I think it's unrealistic to expect him to be at his absolute best at any point in this series, considering we haven't even seen him on a court, and game 1 is tonight. So what is your prediction overall? We've made our picks here. Knowing what we know right now, what is your official prediction for these finals?
Yeah, it's funny, right? You kind of don't know, are we going to see like 2 different series with and without KD? When is the second series going to kick in? I picked Warriors in 7 because I think the Warriors can win without him, and you have to allow for the possibility that he comes back in game 3 or 4, and actually 80% of KD is still better than whatever else is sopping up those minutes right now.
Recapping for those of you joining us again, we opened our show with our picks, but Jay Williams, your pick for the finals is?
If KD doesn't come back, I have Toronto winning in 7.
Just you don't have to preface it.
I do have to preface it because if KD comes back, it's a different scenario. It's a completely different.
How is it different? If KD comes back in game 3, I'm making a scenario up here.
I think it just gives him another weapon. I think with KD back, their offense is right now they can't sustain Clay or Steph having an off night. KD comes back, they don't say
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. Like, Steph didn't have a very good first half in Houston, had a great second half. That was an off night.
So he didn't have an off night.
No, but I'm just saying he did have an off night because that first half.
If he had a great second half, RJ, he didn't have an off night.
They hung in.
They hung in because one person dominated in the first half. They can have, an off night as far as a full game, but if you score 0 points in the first half, even if you ball in the second half.
He had 30 in the second half.
I'm saying even if you ball, it's still an off night. If you're up 20, but Houston, the score was tied.
I said this morning, I said, look, you can't say that they won that game with Steph having an off night. It might have been the most famous game of his career.
What are you talking about? Sometimes you just say things that don't make sense.
That is not even true. What I am saying is that he doesn't have to have a perfect game in order for him to be dominant.
If you're Houston, you got to be up 12 at the half. If Stephen Curry has 0 points and KD is out of the game, and that team is already kind of thin to begin with, you got to be up 12.
Thank you, Zachary.
So let's put it this way. Let me reframe it for you. Which player is under the most pressure to play well in these finals for either team in order for his team?
Something?
Sure.
Please. So if Steph and Golden State lose to Toronto and Kevin doesn't come back, do you think the case could be made that first championship they won was kind of an anomaly due to the fact that now the rest of the league has caught up with the style in which the rest of the league plays? Like that first time they won a championship, their strategy and their style was completely different than the rest of the league. Nobody played that amount of three-point shots, that spacing, that pace.
And to be clear, I wanted to make sure that this perspective to what you're saying, because I know where you're going with this. That was a finals that they won where LeBron was playing basically by himself. That was the series on that team.
No. I joined the next year. I didn't want any part of that nonsense, right? But no, so I was on the first team, the 73 win team when we were fortunate to win, and then I was on the team the very first year when KD got there. And when I tell you that it is not a fun place to be in between those two, I know that the Warriors and the way they play is still better than everyone else, right? Even if other teams are shooting more threes, using more analytics, all of these things that are going into the pot that are helping teams close the gap, unless you have two shooters like them, you're not going to close the gap. So I think that for me, I think Steph has the most pressure on him because he does have to do this without Kevin Durant, and they are still favored. So if you're favored, like you said, Toronto's kind of happy to be there, right? This is their first year. Golden State is going there with the expectations of we're trying to be.
So do you think there is a path now to Anthony Davis and Zion teaming up in New Orleans and trying to create a super team there?
I think there's just Zion. It's the revamping of the training staff. It's the practice facility they've got coming. I mean, the bugaboo about New Orleans in the league, and you can speak to this, is that they have kind of been a little behind in the trappings of what an NBA organization is supposed to look like. And that's why David Griffin, when they won the lottery, is like, hey, this is great. This is awesome. But, like, it's not just this. It has to be everything that we can go to AD with. And look, if he wants out, he wants out. But he said all along, I love New Orleans. I love the city. I just want to win. I want to have a functional organization. You're going to have the second thing. AD, Zion, Drew Holiday, and cap space is kind of interesting for the next 3 years. Not immediately, but for the next
I'm just like,
No, will you stop giggling?
No, I'm just smiling because those are all the things you say when you don't want to be there anymore. You know what I mean, RJ?
Yeah.
Oh, I love this organization. I love this city.
But he said it for years and years and
I know,
years.
but he's also been giving us signs that he wants to go, guys. I mean, look at the shirt that he wore. I mean, that's all, folks. Like, he's been giving you signs throughout this entire season. His agent has been giving everybody signs. I understand David
that's
Griffin.
a Space Jam, too.
It's incredible. I understand. And I love David Griffin. I thought he would have been great for the Lakers to make a hire. I think he's incredible. Instead of waiting another 3 or 4 years for everybody else to mature to get there.
And I agree. I still believe that he wants to go, but let's look at it from this point. From the day the season ended to where the Pelicans are right now, they're in such a better spot.
I agree
and
with
I'm
you on
not
that.
talking about the draft. I'm talking about adding Griff, the draft, just where they are as a franchise and the ability to even bring AD back to the table and try to talk to him.
Well, and not only that, not only are you right, but you look at what's happened to them since the season ended, and look what's happened to the Lakers since the season ended. They're like a bad soap opera. They're like a movie you would walk out of because it seems unrealistic that they're so completely dysfunctional.
I think a lot of people have walked out of that movie.
Is that what is he dying to throw himself into the middle of that?
Well, they got to get another guy, right? Like LeBron, AD, and nothing is not that much more interesting to me if I'm thinking long term and I'm AD than Zion, Drew Holiday, cap space. I mean, it's just not that much more interesting.
Right, because bear in mind, it's worth pointing out, in order to get AD, he's not a free agent. They would have to trade all these young pieces.
Those guys are gone.
I understand what you meant. I want to make sure the audience gets that. Like, you're going to say, well, but they got Kyle Kuzma. No, they don't.
Oh, he's gone.
All those guys would have to go to New Orleans
everything.
in that trade. Be interesting to see how this thing goes. There was other breaking news from our NBA insider, Adrian Wojnarowski, yesterday. He's quite busy. He says that the Rockets general manager, Daryl Morey, is being very aggressive trying to improve his roster. He's apparently willing to use picks and make all players available. Now, he did point out the notion of trading James Harden seems almost implausible and impossible to believe, but that they want to be aggressive in moving him. And we had Woj live on earlier this morning, and he made that point again. But Chris Paul, to me, is the fascinating one, because I think I already knew this. But when I saw in the notes yesterday just how much money he still is owed, Chris Paul is due $124 million over the next 3 years. Is there a trade to be had for him if he wants to do it?
I'm going to say yes.
There we
now,
go.
All right.
There we go.
I don't think there's a good trade. Like, I don't think they're going to get the mother load, but I think there's a neutral trade. And look, Chris Paul, I feel like he's becoming a salary figure. Chris Paul is still a great player. Now, he's not an all-NBA player anymore. He's not an all-star anymore, but it's not like he's just Bismack Biyombo taking up $20 million doing nothing.
No.
He's a great player. And on July 1st, the whole league is going to change, and there is going to be a team or two that comes out of it looking completely different and maybe has a need for a good veteran point guard. We just don't know who.
Let me pin you down because I love Chris Paul, okay? Chris Paul is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest point guards that ever lived. But right now, is he a top 5 point guard in the NBA?
No.
So someone is going to take on $30 million a year for a guy who right now is like the 8th best point guard in the NBA?
38.5.
38 and a half. Sorry.
Going up.
Next year. Yeah, just
That's
want to clarify.
Roster with pieces that are maybe good depth pieces around James Harden. I'm going to say I think that's going to be possible. I don't think it's just a total non-starter.
But Zach, does that get you closer to winning a championship in the loaded West? Even if, like, for Golden State, even if they lose KD, like Klay Thompson not getting the Supermax still allows them to go out and get another big-time free agent. So the West is still loaded with Portland, with the Clippers, with Golden State. So getting complementary pieces doesn't help you get to a championship.
Totally. Look, if your goal is to beat Golden State, it's a long shot every time. But I'm just going to say, no one thought they had the goods to get Chris Paul, right? And like Daryl Morey pulled that. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say it's impossible for them to do a functional Chris Paul. I'm just not going to say it.
Let's just have some fun. What does a James Harden trade look like? Woj said it. He said it's almost impossible to envision it. And I don't expect it to happen. But let's just spend 60 seconds envisioning what it would be. If they wanted to trade James Harden, if he decided, I'm putting Harden on the trade block, what would happen?
You're going to be putting your job on the trade block, too.
There's only,
if you're trying to trade James Harden right now, you are making a statement that hasn't been made by many teams. To trade a guy that is an MVP, is going to be top 2 again, and just be like, we're going to just blow this up.
Kobe Bryant said you cannot win a championship playing the way he
There's
plays.
only 3 players I would trade for James Harden. That would be KD, Giannis, or maybe Kawhi.
Yeah,
3.
Yeah.
That's it. 3 for James. He's top 5 in the league.
Yeah, there is no trade.
Who else can you trade for him?
I just think if you're trading him to tear it down. And like Daryl Morey 2 weeks ago said, I can't remember to who, apologies. He said, it's very likely James Harden is going to be the best player I ever work with in my career. And I feel like I failed him. Like, I don't know that you say that and like, okay, now I'm going to start looking at it.
Oh, we've seen GMs and presidents change pretty quick.
Yeah,
those are strong words.
Those are very strong words.
Those are strong
To be clear, we do not expect him to get traded here. All right, let me get up and go. We got a lot of other things to get to here, fellas, and it starts in Boston. Bill Belichick was on hand at the beginning last night to wave the Bruins flag, but it would be an unhappy finish for the Bruins. Carl Gunnarsson scored on a delayed penalty just under 4 minutes into overtime to lift the Blues to a 3-2 win, and that evens up the Stanley Cup Finals at 1 game apiece. Game 3 Saturday night back in St. Louis. To golf as we get up and go. Tiger Woods is currently on the course at the Memorial. That's video of him warming up earlier. He started on the 10th hole. He started on the back 9 here. He made a great par from what I'm told on 10. He drove it into a bunker and managed to get up and down from about 115 yards away. He birdied the par 5 second hole, which is actually number 11, but the second he played, and I'm told he just parred number 12. So Tiger Woods right now at 1 under. You see this is very early going there at Jack Nicklaus's tournament, the Memorial, on a golf course, for those who don't know, that's very similar to Augusta. So I expect Tiger to play well. We'll keep you posted. Baseball. The Dodgers rallied with 4 runs in the bottom of the 9th off Edwin Diaz to shock the Mets 9-8 last night. Cody Bellinger, who's had just a ridiculous start to his season, tied the game with an RBI double before Alex Verdugo walked it off with a sac fly. Home teams had been 0-234 this year when trailing by 3 or more runs entering the bottom of the 9th. The Dodgers, the first to overcome that last night. And then the breaking news this morning, Jay Williams, that Zion Williamson has signed with an agent. He is signing with CAA Sports to handle his career as he moves now into the NBA.
A guy is potentially going to get a $100 million shoe deal. He's going to be the most lucrative marketing player in the game of basketball after LeBron James.
He is the biggest star ever to walk into the league, in my opinion, and it's not close. And that includes LeBron and anyone else you want to put into that conversation. And then as we get up and go, this is interesting to me. There are 5 teams in the NFL that are eligible for Hard Knocks this summer, including the teams coached by both Gruden brothers, the Raiders and Skins. Jay Gruden suggested yesterday that his brother John's team would be the perfect fit for that show. Listen.
If they were smart, they would go to Oakland. I mean, seriously, what an entertainment value that would be. Antonio Brown, John Gruden, Paul Gunther, Montez Burfict. Incognito. These guys got to be crazy not to go to Oakland. They can do us next year, maybe.
Not if you make the playoffs.
If we don't make the playoffs, I probably won't be here anyway. So. They can come here and do it all they want.
How about that? A little lighthearted gallows humor there by Jay Gruden. There's a lot to unpack there, if you will. First and foremost, why do teams hate being on Hard Knocks so much?
All the distractions. Your routine is different, right? Like training camp is unique in itself because of the grind of it, the 16, 17, 18-hour days. But then you've got cameras, you've got interviews. People maybe aren't naturally themselves. And also there's rookies that are coming into the NFL, and now they have to deal with all that extra stuff.
Now, he said that like he was kidding around, but I don't think he is. I think he knows that his job is on the line. So I'll ask you this. Will they make the playoffs this year?
I don't see them making the playoffs, and he's right that his job is on the line. I will say this. The Redskins do have some pieces that are better than people think. Like, they have the potential to be a top 10 defense. They've got some really good defensive pieces. If you look at their defensive line, Durant Payne, the Bama boys, he's got really good internal push. They still have Josh Allen, who's really coming on and being not only a good run stopper, but great in the pass rush game. They drafted Montez Sweat out of Mississippi State, so a great defensive line. They signed Landon Collins, one of the better young safeties in all of the NFL. And then they still have Josh Norman. So there's good pieces on their defense that is there. And then if you look at some of the offensive stuff, like if their offensive line is healthy, they're going to get Darius Geis back, who was a draft pick 2 years ago, didn't play last year because of a torn ACL, but he was having a really good offseason. So that running game is going to get going. So that's a very nice piece for the offense. Can Josh Doxson take a step forward on the outside to be a productive receiver, a big-time receiver? They've got 2 receivers they drafted. Kelvin Harmon out of North Carolina State, big-bodied guy, and then Terry McLaurin out of Ohio State. So there are some pieces to this team that if they can get it together, although Jay Gruden was joking, I won't be here, that they can make a run. But some of those pieces, the young guys need to step up.
It feels like 1,000 years ago, but they went in November last year leading that division. Then Alex Smith sustained that terrible injury, and their season was basically over. And the one name you didn't mention in any of that was Dwayne Haskins. But at some point this season, we assume he'll be their quarterback,
and
right?
that's certainly the chip for Jay Gruden, right? Like if this team's struggling and they insert Dwayne Haskins in and some of that young talent plays better and Haskins plays better, then he can go to ownership and general manager and be like, listen, I've got this young quarterback. He's playing well. He's going to give us a chance. But we'll see how all those young pieces fit around Dwayne Haskins.
All right, and we'll see if they wind up on Hard Knocks. We're just getting started here. Huge hour still.